Hi everyone, it's Katherine and Newt again from the Greenhorn Valley Library, and Minnie. Happy first day of fall. I figured we could do an outdoor animal story time, and as you can see, it's, a zoo, but that's okay. Today we're going to read The Curious Garden by Peter Brown. It's not really about fall, but it's about gardening, so it'll do. Newt is in the way, but wants to be on my lap, so we'll make it work. There once was a city without gardens or trees or greenery of any kind. Most people spent their time indoors. As you can imagine, it was a very dreary place. Dreary. However, there was one boy who loved being outside. Even on drizzly days, while everyone else stayed inside, you could always find Liam happily splashing through his neighborhood. It was on one such morning that Liam made several surprising discoveries. He was wandering around the old railway as he did from time to time when he stumbled upon a dark stairwell leading up to the tracks. The railway had stopped working ages ago, and since Liam had always wanted to explore the tracks, there was only one thing for the curious boy to do. Liam ran up the stairs, pushed open the door, and stepped out onto the railway. The first thing he saw was a lonely patch of color. Wildflowers and plants were the last thing he had expected to find up there, but when he took a closer look, it became clear that the plants were dying. They needed a gardener. You see the plants coming up in the railroad? Plants will come up pretty much anywhere if it's left alone, huh? Liam may not have been a gardener, but he knew that he could help. So he returned to the railway the very next day and got to work. The flowers nearly drowned and he had a few pruning problems, but the plants patiently waited while Liam found better ways of gardening. It's just learning. As the weeks rolled by, Liam began to feel like a real gardener, and the plants began to feel like a real garden. It's getting so pretty. You're having trouble balancing. Yes. Most gardens stay in one place, but this was no ordinary garden. With miles of open railway ahead of it, the garden was growing restless. It needed to explore. Do you need to explore? I'll put you in the tire. The tough little weeds and mosses were the first to move. They popped up further and further down the tracks and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. Over the next few months, Liam and the Curious Garden explored every corner of the railway. See how big it's getting? There's his garden. It's daisies. After spending his spring and summer and autumn with the garden, Liam's time on the railway was finally interrupted by winter. Heavy blankets of snow fell on the city that season, and for the first time since he'd become a gardener, Liam could not visit the plants. There's no plants. Rather than waste his winter worrying about the garden, Liam spent it preparing for spring. After 3 cold months, the snow finally began to melt, and Liam rolled his new gardening gear over to the railway. Winter's a little more than 3 months here, isn't it? He can't be in Colorado. Winter had taken a toll on the garden. But thanks to Liam's planning, his handy new tools, and a little help from the sun, the plants soon awoke from their winter sleep. The garden had always wanted to explore the rest of the city, and that spring it was finally ready to make its move. Once again, the tough little weeds and mosses set out first. They popped up further and further from the railway and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. The garden was especially curious about old, forgotten things. A few plants popped up where they didn't belong. That's on a stop sign, that's not safe. A few plants popped up, or others mysteriously popped up all at once. You are not being the biggest helper today, did you know? But the most surprising things that popped up were the new gardeners. And people are starting their own gardens. And it's making the city more pretty. See, and they're having picnics. And there's a pond. Those are some serious lily pads. Moose shrubs. Many years later, the entire city had blossomed, but of all the new gardens, Liam's favorite was where it all began. See the whole city? Thank you for coming to story time. I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Bye.